RPA is all about automating systems, taking our pre-existing computer systems that we have and adding an extra layer of automation on top of them for various reasons. Typically, these RPA bots will interact with applications to execute a workflow. And this workflow is based around existing rules around what the bot should be doing. Automation itself has been around for a while, and RPA automation has been around for the past 15, 20 years. Predecessors to that, there was other forms of automation, but RPA has now made it a lot easier to automate our systems. And as a result of that, we are finding a lot more of the tasks that were done by a human now starting to be delegated off to our virtual robotic workforce. So we're getting groups of virtual bots who are now going through and doing a lot of the processes that a human used to do. So here's an example of how RPA could help in an organization. Imagine you have some nice processes that need to be done. Unfortunately, they're incredibly boring, and nobody really likes to sit down and do them. So what happens? The employees do them while they have no choice, but when they get an opportunity, they either move on to another job, resulting in high employee turnover, or potentially they will just say, oh, I can't be bothered doing this. So how can we get around that? And this is where RPA fits in. RPA is, by itself, it enables automation, but when we add it on to being able to streamline our processes, analyze the processes that we currently have, and then automate them, what we can do is turn it around so the boring, repetitive tasks that our employees used to do can now be handed off to the bot, and then the employee can now start to focus on tasks that require that human touch. Either it's too difficult for a bot to do, or it requires, human interaction in there, or anything that's, the sort of things that we as humans enjoy, so that we can really have an impact in our job. Now, what are some of the advantages of RPA? So, first of all, having a bot, it's often able to do it faster than what a human can. It is literally interacting with the system components on your machine. It doesn't need to take the time to move your hand around from one place to another, or if you're like me and you've got multiple screens and you're constantly looking around. Instead, it can focus on just what it needs to do for the task. Related to that is improved accuracy. Remember, these are bots. They don't get bored. It can do the same task hundreds, thousands, millions of times, and it will do it with the same precision and accuracy as it did it the first time. Related to that is improved compliance and governance. Often organizations have rules that need to be followed in order to guarantee results or to ensure that they're meeting their government regulations. As humans, though, sometimes we find those boring, and we might want to take shortcuts along the process. So we might skip some of these parts that are required, and it turns out that, oops, that's actually a bad thing to do. So by putting a bot in the place, we can guarantee that it will do the same process correctly every time, following all the rules and regulations that have been built into it. Another advantage is we have a reduced cost of process automation. So this kind of ties into our faster execution speed. We can do more processing per unit of time as a human would. The other advantage of having a bot is a bot can run 24/7. It doesn't need to sleep. It doesn't need to go home to have a meal. It doesn't have loved ones that are waiting for it to turn up. So it can just constantly keep processing over and over again. So that gives you both the faster processing plus the fact that it's able to run for longer. And one final benefit is it enables for easier scaling. Now, we work at the university, so we get to see some of the fun science that happens. But unfortunately, one of the things that we haven't figured out how to do is to clone a human yet. So until we get that, pretty much every one of us is unique. In contrast, a bot can be easily cloned. So if your workload increases, rather than just pushing off the workload and not handling it, you can just add another bot to your system. As it continues to increase, you just add as many bots as you need in order to handle that increase in processing. And then if times die down, you don't need as much processing capacity, you reduce how many bots you have on there. No need for redundancies or other costly experiences. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, this sounds very much like what we do in any form of software development or software engineering. So why RPA specifically? Well, one of the advantages of an RPA solution is it's non-invasive. You don't have to go and change the interfaces to your system. Instead, what you can use is the pre-existing interfaces that you already have. Remember, a bot is just like a virtual human. It will use the same systems that a human is using. Another advantage is RPA is often easier to start with. I will show you later on in the demo how we can just go through and record information as we are going through a process. So this enables for quick and easy capture of at least a base process that we might go through. Later on, we can then get someone to come and modify that to improve it. But at least we've got that starting point where even someone without the knowledge of how to build a computer system can come and record these workflows. Another advantage that I mentioned is it's easy to scale. The technology for having RPA bots has been around for a while now, but what has come reasonably recently is the infrastructure that enables us to run multiple bots and monitor and maintain them with a minimum of effort on our behalf. And then finally, bots are future-proof. The companies that are producing the RPA software, they are the ones who are putting all the effort into making sure that their bots work in the best possible way. So rather than us needing to spend the time to work out how to improve our systems, instead we can focus on the part that's important for us, the business functionality that we need to have in there. Now, I'm just going to give you a couple of examples of how we have implemented RPA at the University of Auckland. And in particular, these are two of the processes that are fairly common across a broad variety of organizations. So one of these is purchase order processing, when a purchase order comes in and it needs to be taken through a series of steps to get it approved, the money sent off, etc. The other is about adding new suppliers to our list of authorized suppliers. These both tend to be fairly tedious processes that people don't really like to do. But at the same time, they have nice, clear rules that a bot can follow to go through and implement it with a minimum of problems. So for the purchase order system, we implemented that in February 2018. And as you see, we had a little bit of a bumpiness when we started off the process. But then by August of the same year, we were able to get our turnaround times so that we were getting through 4.5 times as many purchase orders as we were originally in February. So we had a huge increase in the throughput for these purchase orders. You also see, as a result of increasing the turnaround time, we got much more improved customer satisfaction out the other end. So the customer satisfaction from our surveys went from 80 to 90%, and we were able to meet our service level agreements 99 times out of 100, so 99%, which is it's a 9% increase. But if you are one of those customers who's in that remaining 10%, that's pretty impressive. Um, in addition, we have increased the throughput that we have. So every year, the number of orders that we have is increasing. So normally what we would do is hire more employees to handle this additional processing. As putting in bots to handle this, we didn't need to handle additional employees. Instead, we could just scale up another bot that would increase the additional processing. This also means we were able to put our staff who were working purely on purchase order processing onto other areas that was more meaningful. It added more value both to them for what they were doing and also for the organization. Now, the final graph here that I have is around the changes that we got for new supplier setup. We managed to reduce the time it took to add a new supplier into our systems by 88%. So the turnaround went from a huge 12.5 days. This is from when one of our staff came up and said, hey, we have a new supplier we want to add. And it went from 12.5 days down to 1.5 days. So pretty much within 2 working days, we were able to have our suppliers set up and running in our system. So that's some of the benefits and advantages of RPA. Now, given that you are here probably to learn a little bit more about RPA, one of the questions that you might have is, why do you want to learn RPA? Beyond the fact that, maybe this is something that your boss has sent you here, there might be a little bit of personal interest in it. So first of all, from a personal basis, RPA can help you as an individual. Since we have been implementing RPA at the university, we have been starting to train our staff on how to use RPA. And what we are finding is people will often set up RPA processes to handle some of the boring, repetitive tasks that they don't like to do. I have set up several RPA processes myself that will basically streamline different tasks that I need to do. And then instead of spending the time to go through and do them, I can just fire up the bot and it will go through and do them. RPA is also an upcoming skill. Automation has been around for a while, originally started in manufacturing, but now with the increase in digital systems, RPA is becoming more and more critical. So being able to have that as a skill that we can say that we can do will help both ourselves personally and the organizations that we are working with. So why then would your organization be interested in getting you to learn RPA? Well, as I mentioned, automation skills are becoming more and more common. As I mentioned, I work with robots, and one of the challenges that we have with robots is actually integrating with the hardware side of robots. Whereas RPA, it's all virtual, it's all software, and that's so much easier. It doesn't have the complexity of these hardware components. So having the automation in there means that your organization can turn around things faster. It also gives you the ability to identify areas that can be improved in the organization. Believe it or not, most organizations have very inefficient processes for doing things. And part of the problem is, as we get employees moving into a position, they just take over the existing processes without thinking about how can we improve them. Doing RPA will help you to get into the mindset of, here is this process. I know I don't like it. How could I improve it? Finally, for the organization, the more automation we have, the more we can move the workers onto the areas that really brings value to the organization. So it makes you a more effective worker for the organization and potentially bring more value in. And looking about what else RPA is, it's going to be very common in the future. Look at what happened in COVID-19. There was a recent report that the couriers were twice as busy during this COVID-19 period as they were over Christmas. So we just get to see how much more processing that they needed to do. But switch it around, think about that. You've got more people putting in orders, more people requesting things that now need to go through the system. So how can we streamline those processes so that we are not wasting time basically processing orders and doing the boring repetitive tasks? We also see that there is an increasing move to digital strategies. Digital is actually fairly cheap, and the infrastructure is now getting in place that if we can move things to an automated process online, then we can get a lot more scalability, robustness, etc. out of that. If you look at the schools, they are putting in a huge push to get the digital curriculum implemented in the schools so that the students who are coming through, right from primary, intermediate, secondary through to university, they will know a lot more about digital processes and how things work. Finally, another big buzzword that we have nowadays is AI, automated intelligence. So what we see is as AI and machine learning start to come into play, some of the tasks that are currently outside the ability of RPA is now becoming a lot more doable. Look at machine vision. 10 years ago, machines would have a hard time being able to read text that they see through the camera. Now that's a common task. So combine that with RPA means we could start taking in letters, scanning those, reading them, and doing some processing around them. Okay, so now for a switch away from the business side, how do you actually go through and choose a good process? So at a very basic, what we want is a process that is well structured. The more definition that it has, the easier that it is to convert into an RPA process. Another thing is we want to have rules. Now, this doesn't mean it's just a linear sequence of rules. There can be branching rules in there, but without these rules, if it's requiring on a human's judgment, your RPA bot is never going to be able to handle that. And finally, to add value to the process, you're looking for something that is repetitive. If it's just a one-off process or something that happens very rarely, you're less likely to get value out of converting this to an automated process. If it's something that's done on a very regular basis and you don't want to go and modify the underlying systems, that's a very good candidate. Another good candidate is something that might not be done quite as often, but it tends to be a little bit more complicated and we forget how to do it over time. So for example, as a lecturer, we look at how we can process some of the things that we might do just at the end of every semester, like processing marks and putting those onto the other systems. So being able to automate those means that we can just click it off at the end of every semester and it'll do it for us automatically. Now, there is a lot more to this. This is just a very high level overview of choosing processes. If you want to learn more about these, of course, as Ted mentioned, we are going to be offering a short course around RPA. We will delve into a lot more detail on how to choose a good process for RPA. So now onto the fun part. How do you actually build an RPA bot? And to do this, what I have here is a very simple website. The website basically is like a customer service site where a sales rep can go through, see their products, the customers, the orders that they have. Unfortunately, this is a very poorly designed site. So it doesn't give us a lot of the functionality that we might want to do. And in particular, a sales rep might want to go through and extract all the orders for all the customers. Now, from a traditional approach, we would go and talk to the software developers and say, can you add this report in for me? And that might take weeks, months to implement. So let's look at how we can do this in RPA. So we are going to use the UiPath Studio tool. This is one of the leading providers of RPA solutions, and there is a academic alliance that they have, which means we here at the university have full access to their tools, and we will teach people using this product. So here I have set up a simple workflow, and I'm going to show you how we can go through and build this workflow to extract all the customer orders into an Excel spreadsheet. And the way I'm going to do this is if I was just a user who is going through and doing it. And by that, I'm going to start off by doing a web recording. First step, we'll open up the browser. I'm not going to assume anything is in place. And that will open up and go to this URL. As I mentioned, this is just a test application. And then I'm going to go through and record a series of steps. So the first thing I need to do is get the list of all the customers. So I get that by coming and clicking on this button here, and it now brings up this list of customers. I now want to take this list of customers and bring it into my workflow. And that is nice and easy by just doing a copy and scrape data. And again, this is just a wizard that you step through. It pretty much holds your hand along the way. And it's giving me an example of the data that I'll be getting. And once I've done that, it's now got to the point where it has extracted all the data and put it into the application for me. Now, I'm going to stop the recording now. And you see that this has brought up the details of what I've recorded. And it has recorded it into this table. Now, this is one of the small fun things about UiPath. It doesn't give unique names for each of these tables. So before I do any more recording, I'm just going to change the names so I don't get errors later on. So now the next thing I want to do is go through this list of customers that I have and extract the orders for each one. So what I'm going to do is fire up and do a for each task that will just iterate through each of my customers. Add that to my customer list. And then once again, I'm just going to go in and record the steps that I would do. So in this case, let's do record, come into my orders, put in a customer number. Now for this one, I'm just going to put a dummy customer number in, and then that will get replaced with the actual customer number from my data set when I go back and modify it. And then click on my load data. And now I'm going to come in once again and then scrape this data. Table, it's got all the data that we see there. Finish that, and it's not it. And if I save and exit that, so now what we see is it has gone through and built up this workflow where it will extract the customer order data from each person. And now the last thing that I need to do, or two last things, is I need to change this number so it is a per customer number. So what I'm going to do is get this customer number. I've just set this up as a new variable, so you might be asking where it's coming from. And I'm just going to do an assign task where I will go in and assign my customer number to the first item in this row. Now, if this looks a little bit arcane, it's just understanding the syntax that you need in order to use UiPath. This is something that, again, we delve into a lot more depth in the course that we're offering, but for now, you'll just have to trust me that this is what we do. The other part that I'm going to do is change our table name here to something that means something more than the default name. And I'm going to call that order list. And then finally, what I'm going to do is go through and dump that out to an Excel file. So for this, I have to have an Excel scope, and I'm just going to dump this out to, in this case, a single data file, and I will go through and write the values for that and the order list. Now, this gives us an example of how quick and easy it is to build a workflow in here. Now, at the moment, the workflow's not perfect, but what I will do is I will save that and run through and show you that it does actually work. So this is now starting up. You see it's got some logging in there. It's opening up the website. It's gone to the customers to get all the list of customers. And then it should go through and get all the list of orders in there, assuming I've built this right. It's always the fun of doing a live coding session, as sometimes you put mistakes into it. And it looks like it is working in the background. I'm getting things that are flicking up on my second screen. So just to finish off, let's go in, and what we see, if I open up my Excel spreadsheet, is I have an Excel spreadsheet that has some of the data in there. It looks like it is a little bit messed up in here, but that's probably just because I went through this process of doing everything so quickly. What you'd then take the time to do is to spend a little bit of time cleaning things up and getting it working. But this took me about 10 minutes to build a basic data extraction and dumping it into Excel. So you could imagine that you could spend a little bit of time and get some really nice data extraction out of that without requiring a software developer to come in and go through the long and often laborious process of modifying the systems. So that is our demonstration. Just to finish up, we have a question about what is happening with RPA in the future. So RPA is a fairly new solution. It's only been around for about 10-15 years, and it is starting to gain a lot of traction. These are 4 of the major areas that the RPA vendors are currently working in. So one of those is trying to remove our dependency on coders. So can we get someone like a business analyst to go through and build the bulk of the RPA bot themselves? Can they use the tools that are there to simplify the process? As you see, I was able to do it using just the recording tools and build things up very quickly. We actually did a test where we tried to code the same sort of process as I did in the demo, and that took a couple of hours to get roughly the same process in there. Another common trend that we're getting is these RPA marketplaces. So the vendors are recognizing that they can't do everything. So they are now making it possible for you to build your own components or get somebody else to build a component for you, and then you just combine these components together. So we're getting really fast uptake now on these marketplaces, which means our solutions are now being able to be built a lot faster. Self-learning RPA. So with artificial intelligence and machine learning, we are now able to automatically extract the processes that we need to do. So we can data mine logs to say, this is a common process. These are the different routes that we take through the process. How can we then take that information and then build an RPA process based on that? And finally, we've got cognitive automation, which is about making our RPA bots smarter. rather than failing if something doesn't work, what they can do is use some AI in there to say, oh, this is actually similar to an existing scenario. It's within my confidence interval of saying I can do it, therefore I will start to do it. And that is probably the major area that the RPA providers are working on at the moment, because we really want to try and get rid of as much of the repetitive processes as we can. And if we can make our bots smarter to handle these, then they will be able to remove even more of the common processes that people don't want to do. So that's a little bit about RPA. It's been a very quick run through of it. If you want to play around more with RPA, my first suggestion would be to download and play with one of the RPA tools. As I mentioned, the tool that we use here at the University of Auckland is UiPath. It is one of the best tools that is out there. They are well recognized by Gartner and other organizations as being a progressive, forward-looking RPA vendor. There are other tools out there, and by all means go and play with those to see what some of the differences are. Another option is to share some of your experiences. So both what you are doing and what other people are doing in the RPA space. Here in Auckland, the local UiPath vendor has set up regular meetings. They've told me that their last one actually got cancelled due to the COVID-19 situation, but they do try to run a meetup every 2 to 3 months where people get together and share their experiences. The other option is there are online forums. These aren't so much New Zealand based, so it's a bit more of an international focus, but again, it's a good way to talk with other people, share what you've been able to do or your problems, and potentially get feedback on that. So with that, that's pretty much my presentation. As we did mention earlier, we are putting together a short course around RPA, where we will teach you how to build a RPA solution, right from here is a problem that I think might be solvable, through to can I analyze that, work out whether it is a good RPA problem, through to building the bot and then deploying it at the other end. This is using the UiPath toolset. So we will cover Studio, the Orchestrator, some of the other bits and pieces that they have in their package. And at the end of it, you will then have the option of getting the professional certification through UiPath